yourself and your phone.
You're gonna walk the entire length of this hallway, Dave.
Decades of indifference carry consequences.
You are so amazing.
Some more consequential than most.
Oh my God.
Dave Repsher spent more days in the hospital than there are days in a year.
Yay!
He burned because the system failed.
People have known, like the manufacturers have known, the operators have known. If a helicopter crashes, it's most likely going to go up in flames.
Consequences. For more than 3 years, 9 Wants to Know traveled from one coast to the other, documenting the true extent of a national problem: survivable crashes, preventable fires.
Contributing to the severity of the injuries was the helicopter's fuel system, which was not crash resistant.
This year, as our investigation,
the yays are 93,
finally turned indifference into change.
Chris Vanderveen from KUSA Channel 9 for his diligent reporting about the dangers of these fragile and outdated fuel systems.
Dave and Amanda Repsher turned injury into action.
Dave's the strongest person I've ever met in my life.
It is a survival story unlike any other.
On average, I've had a surgery every 3 weeks. Excited to get this one done.
A story,
Jimmy!
not just of the consequences of indifference,
Yet they continue to ignore it.
but of the difference made by one man soaked in fuel and burned in fire.
He never gave up, and Dave never called it quits. I just know he's going to do big things. He's not done. There's nothing done.
It was a black hole. I don't remember a thing. Not one thing. It was black. I didn't wake up until December 14th, 5.5 months later. It was bizarre. It was like a camera shutter going across my eyes. It went from black to light, just kind of across my eyes. And I was awake.
And then I knew the second it happened, because he looked me straight in the eye, and he hadn't done that for 5.5 months. So I knew right away that he was there.
I was terrified. My perception was that I couldn't talk. I couldn't move.
And that first day was, you're okay talking about it, right?
Uh-huh.
It was terrifying for both of us. As soon as he woke up, because he looked me straight in the eye, and he started mouthing, "I want to die." And I was like, this isn't what he's saying. And I watched him mouth it a couple times, and then I grabbed the nurse and I said, I'm a wreck, and I'm hopefully imagining this, but can you go see what Dave's mouthing? And I stepped out of the room, and she came out and she said, "Oh, Amanda, that's what he's saying."
We were going to a public relations event, and there was no urgency. We were responding to a call.
Inside a less than 2-year-old helicopter, pilot Pat Mahaney
I had 100% faith in him. He was a fantastic pilot.
and flight nurses Matt Bowe and Dave Repsher.
Matt and I both noticed something was wrong shortly after takeoff. And what I do remember is I looking over at Matt, and he's looking over at me, and we just looked back at each other and cinched down our belts, and then went along for the ride.
That ride would last no more.
911, what's the address of the emergency?
No more than 32 seconds.
Our flight for life helicopter just crashed at the hospital. We have people heading your way, okay?
9 Wants to Know began its investigation because of that, right there. Go back in the video to the moment of impact. Start from there. And then stop. There. That's fuel pouring onto the parking lot. Inside the helicopter, it's also pouring onto Dave.
That's what it felt like, as someone dumped like a big 5-gallon bucket of cold fluid right over my shoulders.
Oh, it's all in flames.
Okay.
An X-ray technician, his name's Jimmy Rhodes, ran out of the nearby St. Anthony's Summit Medical Center and toward a fire extinguisher.
Sitting on the wall, and I was like, oh, well, maybe I can use this.
At that moment, Dave Repsher moved. There.
Apparently, I lifted the door off me and started going away from the helicopter. And I remember which way I was going. I didn't know which way was the right way to go, the wrong way to go.
This all happened next to a bike path, thus the cyclist there. About a minute after the crash, Matt Bowe jumped out, injured, but not burned.
There were guys there that actually pulled him to safety. And so I was like, okay, he's good.
A few seconds later, Jimmy Rhodes and his fire extinguisher arrived in frame.
The heat was just that intense to the point where I was like, I don't know. I don't know if I can do this.
But he did do it, mostly because pilot Pat Mahaney was still inside.
And I was just like, all right, I'm going to get him out of here.
We'll stop the video here. Pat's injured critically, mostly from trauma suffered immediately upon impact. The coroner will say burns contributed to his death. He lived just long enough for his widow to say goodbye to him. In the meantime,
I knew I was burned and went into the ER, and I guess that's when I started feeling things, and the pain was bad.
Dave Repsher, an outdoor aficionado, a kayaking enthusiast, understood his condition more than most. The 4-year flight nurse, one-time ambulance paramedic, and EMT told those trying to save his life he'd have to be intubated and then mention what drugs he'd need.
And then they finally got that, and then I can't remember how I told, but I just said, please tell Amanda I love her. And that's the last thing I remember.
Burns covered more than 90% of his body. Few expected him to survive the night. The word accident implies something unforeseeable, unpredictable. If so, what happened to Dave Repsher?
This pilot and the 2 flight nurses were caught in that trap.
What happened was no accident.
And fire was first visible 0.2 seconds later. As
the National Transportation Safety Board broke down the crash in front of Dave and Amanda, frame by frame, fuel, fire, inferno, it determined Dave's injuries were hardly the result of chance.
The accident helicopter was not equipped with, or required to be equipped with, crash-resistant fuel systems.
A problem 9 Wants to Know spent years documenting. Thousands of antiquated helicopter fuel systems, each fully capable of rupturing after otherwise survivable crashes.
But I didn't really know anything about our helicopter.
And you had never heard the term CRFS
No.
before, crash-resistant fuel system. Once he was awake and I asked him, I said, Dave, did you have any idea about any of these lack of safety standards? And he said, no, I had no idea.
No idea of the fires, of the many. In the 2 decades prior to his crash, 9 Wants to Know found 173 fatal helicopter crashes involving catastrophic fires. In 2015, one of the leading researchers in the country on this subject told us this.
If nothing happens fast, more people are going to die.
Absolutely. And more people are going to be severely burned.
Since Dennis Shanahan's prediction, we've documented 21 additional fires. A list that includes a post-crash inferno that killed 4 in Pigeon Forge, Tennessee in 2016, and a crash in the Grand Canyon in 2018. The sightseeing helicopter erupted seconds after impact. 3 people burned immediately. 2 more died from burns in the days that followed.
And to know, to have a very good feeling of what those folks were going through, I mean, it's
just wrong.
Your heart's breaking for them. I mean, it's like, this is not long after what we went through.
What they went through.
There were times that Dave wasn't just the sickest patient in the burn ICU, he was the sickest patient at University Hospital.
A ketamine-induced coma kept Dave Repsher in a 5.5-month black hole.
But I didn't know a passage of time or really where I was or really anything, I guess.
And then one day,
I didn't know where I was.
Dave woke up.
I mean, I was freaked out.
And said 4 words.
And I knew that whatever Dave's decision was, I was gonna respect it, as horrific as it might be. Getting up the next morning and getting over to the hospital, and I got to Dave and I asked him, I said, "Do you remember yesterday?" And he said, "Yes, I do remember yesterday." And I said, "Do you remember what you said?" And he said, "Yeah." I said, "I want to die." And I said, "Do you still feel that way?" And he said, "I don't think so, no."
From that moment on,
You are riding the bike by yourself, Dave Repsher.
Dave moved forward.
This is a monumentous day.
You know, I just had to know what I was facing, and it's like, can I get through this? And at some point, I guess I said, well, let's give it a shot, see what happens.
I would say he's 1 in a million. He was near death so many times.
Under the care of people like Dr. Wichter.
Dave, you're walking.
Oh my gosh, your gait's better now than it was the first time. Oh, you see how it's come back?
Yeah, there isn't a textbook that you can read about this.
Dave learned.
You're gonna walk the entire length of this hallway, Dave.
Learned how to be Dave all over again.
It takes a whole hospital of people to get them better.
I've worked all over the hospital, and I truly believe this is the most painful injury you can have.
And I would have to go in and say, Dave, this is what we want to do today. It's going to be very difficult. It's going to be very painful. Are you sure?
Oh, the pain for him was phenomenal. You could see it in his face.
You're just not sure when you're getting to that level of care what's going to work and what's not. And you aren't sure if he's going to make it through the night. You leave, you go home from your shift and you come back at 7 a.m. and peek in the room and, oh, he's still here.
I had multiple nightmares about Dave passing away. I think most everybody did.
It's really hard to put into words seeing someone that you thought was dying actively to being better to then maybe dying again and then walking in front of you.
You are so amazing.
Recovery for Dave came in steps.
Ready?
A nurse by trade, Dave refused many of the heavy-duty pain medications typically given to burn patients.
And we would warn him, and we'd be like, you sure? We can ask for some, we can have some on hand. Most of the time, he didn't want anything.
Yeah, he's a tough guy.
Steps.
You always got to try to do something more the next day. I just can't get it. If you made 10 steps, the next day go for 11. The next day go for 12.
You got it, Dave.
Good work.
And then one day you go right out the front door.
Oh my gosh.
With the one person who's been by your side since day one.
Yay!
I wouldn't be here without Amanda. I mean, she came every day, was there all day. I look forward to hearing her voice or seeing her every day. And I was in some really dark places, and just to hear Amanda's voice, I know it brought me out of some places that I didn't know if I was ever going to get back from. Yeah, we were in an advanced cardiac life support class. Very romantic.
It was the lightning bolt.
Right away.
Right away. Oh, yeah.
Long before the burns and the scars, Dave and Amanda met and fell in love.
He asked me out. We went kayaking together.
That was 18 years ago. 3 years ago, while Dave was still in the ICU, they decided they had waited long enough.
Yes, we did. Yeah. I mean, we wanted something to celebrate in the midst of all the pain and, dark days. And so, we decided to get married.
Her ring once belonged to Dave's grandmother.
And I put it on my finger and it fit perfectly.
I was involved in a helicopter crash, burned about 90% of my body.
We really hope to give you some perspective on what being a critically ill patient is actually like.
Amanda, like Dave, is a registered nurse. When Dave was in that coma, Amanda simply did what RNs do.
I came to rounds every morning. So, who does that as a family member? And not only did I come to rounds, but I spoke up in rounds.
When Dave woke up, she simply did what Dave needed her to do.
There's times where I felt like, oh, this might be it. And then I'd hear Amanda's voice.
So this is David Rupture.
On average, I've had a surgery every 3 weeks. Excited to get this one done.
Okay, are you ready?
Amanda's voice.
We still feel like we're not quite to the surface. We're trying to come up for air, and we're getting closer.
Getting closer. One surgery and one round of skin grafts at a time.
This is about the only area that we can continue to harvest intermittently for his skin, so we are very protective of this little spot.
In order for the skin to take permanently, doctors had to harvest Dave's own skin.
Yep, that looks like it.
With very little left unburned, doctors like Mickey Gordon relied heavily on two spots: his scalp, once protected by his helmet, and a small section of his right leg.
So that's like the worst case of road rash you ever want to have.
In this case, Dr. Gordon carefully scraped off a piece of Dave's skin and placed it next to what remains of his thumb.
And he realized from the beginning that his hand function was probably one of the most critical areas that he was concerned about.
Years ago, mostly out of necessity, doctors amputated large sections of Dave's fingers. This surgery should help ensure that one day Dave and Amanda get back to what they did on that first date.
And if you ask him, it's because that way he can actually grab the paddle to be able to kayak.
No matter how hard the days got and how bad the pain was, he just fought through it. Dave's the strongest person I've ever met in my life.
A lot of people, I guess, look at me and say, God, how'd you do it? How'd you go through it? And I honestly think that in a lot of ways I had the easier part of it.
It was a fiery Flight for Life crash in Frisco. It results in a headline-inducing, record-breaking, 9-figure legal settlement.
In 2018,
Dave Repsher spent 13 months in the hospital.
Dave's legal fight with the helicopter's manufacturer and operator came to an end.
Will pay him and his legal team the sum of $100 million.
$100 million. 9 figures. All for relying on a fuel system his legal team said was not much stronger than a milk jug.
And I think that's an excellent description of what it was, a flying milk jug.
Dave's medical bills over the course of his life could top $60 million.
I'm an outlier, for sure. I'm not supposed to be here. And that's not what the industry wants.
The industry, as made clear in this videotape deposition, understood the risk all too well.
Right?
Right.
Dave's other attorney, Gary Robb, is the one off camera.
A crash-resistant fuel system is not something that is only a year or two old, correct?
Correct.
It's been known, it's been in existence for decades. True?
True.
Since the 70s, in fact. Stung by fiery crashes in Vietnam, the military all but eliminated post-crash fires with such things as breakaway valves
Drop on 3,
and flexible
2,
fuel bladders
1.
capable of surviving drops like this. 9 Wants to Know reported extensively on this issue for years. We found federal reports like these, one issued in 1980, the other issued in 1985, that urged the civilian helicopter industry to follow the military's lead. Ultimately, The Federal Aviation Administration did change the rules in 1994, but as we found, the FAA created a loophole so big, thousands of helicopters built since 1994 have flown right through it.
Most of the helicopters flying around in the United States today still don't have crash-resistant fuel systems.
All you want is just a fighting chance to get out and get away.
A fighting chance. A few times a year, the city of Pittsburgh honors heroes.
When I was first able to watch the footage of the event, I was just awestruck at what he'd done.
Jimmy!
What is this mullet going on here? Are you serious?
Dave and Amanda came here for the man who ran in.
Thank you guys for coming out. I had no idea.
Jimmy Rhodes, the X-ray tech who grabbed that fire extinguisher.
We'll see you there.
The man who got pilot Pat Mahaney out of the fire.
He gave Patrick and Karen the gift of being able to say goodbye to each other.
Karen.
I can't repay him for what he did.
Karen Mahaney was the one who nominated Jimmy Rhodes for the Carnegie Hero Award.
My voice still quivers and my eyes still tear up. But that's just because I wear my heart on my sleeve.
I can't let him burn. Like that's not gonna happen. I just had this feeling of someone needed to be rescued.
A rescue that allowed Karen.
It is our honor and our privilege to present the Carnegie Medal to Jimmy Rhodes.
Just enough time to get to the hospital.
Thank you, thank you, thank you.
And say goodbye to her husband.
He wanted to get Patrick out of that helicopter, and he did.
In my thoughts, he's a true hero.
Hero.
They just need to know they need to become a donor.
Dave's is a story.
Yeah, I was in a helicopter crash.
A story of many chapters.
With Flight for Life in Frisco.
One of which was almost certainly co-authored by a man named Matt Martinez. It is a list 95,000 names long, each name in need of a kidney.
Who you dancing for?
And it is a list that no longer includes the name Dave Repsher.
Hello, everybody out there.
Thanks to a 2017 donation.
I lost both kidneys, and he stepped forward to be a living donor.
A donation
But I wanted to do something that not
of
only
Matt
helped Dave, but
Martinez,
helped his
who
wife.
arrived at the decision not long after learning about Dave's story.
And then 3 weeks later, after all the testing, it was like a 99% match. And at that point, it's a no-brainer. It's like, dude, it's go time.
Donate life. Let him go. Thank you all.
Honor that choice of his and try to keep his kidney for as long as I can. It's just my reality, I guess, but what I've been through, it's just going to be one battle on to the next.
In the fall of 2018, more than a year after the transplant, Dave's donated kidney showed early signs of rejection.
As challenges came up, it was just like, well, let's see what happens. And this is unexpected.
Every 30 minutes,
Okay.
you just let me know as far as tolerance goes.
Challenges visit Dave's life
Okay.
daily.
Hopefully it works.
A byproduct of surviving a fire that should have killed him.
Well, you're going to get tired of looking at my face, man. I'll be in and out of your hair quite a bit.
It's all good.
This day's challenge, making sure an infusion of infection-fighting immunoglobulin finds its way into the veins just underneath Dave's skin.
So it gets to the point where my veins will actually collapse or rupture. It can be pretty uncomfortable.
It'll take until 2019 to see if it's fully working. Doctors and Dave remain optimistic.
This isn't a situation anyone wants to be in, but if you have to be in it, I think we both feel pretty lucky that we have all the support that we do.
Support.
Keep getting invited to more and more of these things.
Dave never wanted to be the face of a problem.
Your patients are going to be safer with us.
Some sort of incentive.
But here he is with Amanda and Karen Mahaney,
I always feel pretty energized after these things, as long as they go well.
meeting behind closed doors, trying to get those who work in the helicopter industry.
The accreditation agency for medical transport, their board of directors.
Trying to get them to face the problem.
We showed a bunch of the crash video so people could actually get a sense of what it's like to go through these.
What it's like for him on days like day one and days
911, what is the address of the
Yes,
emergency?
help, come quick, my husband's on dialysis and something has happened.
days like 519.
You gotta come now. Come now.
Amanda will never forget that day.
Oh God, oh God. I don't know if he's breathing.
Okay. What's your name, ma'am?
On the night of December 3rd, as you were fighting so hard, bleeding into your chest, all I could do was just put my hand on your head and my other hand on your heart and just told you that I wasn't ready to let you go and to just fight, and I loved you and I wanted you to come back.
And come back, he did.
Unnecessary risks must be eliminated. Crash-worthy fuel systems significantly reduce the possibility of a post-crash fire.
Steps. For Dave Repsher,
And I think Colorado should be very proud of its delegation.
this has always been a matter of steps. One after another.
Both Amanda and Dave are really a force to be reckoned with.
After another.
I credit Chris Vanderveen and the 9 News for devoting so much focus to this accident and helping get to the bottom of why this incident was even possible with such a new helicopter.
In 2018, more than 3 years after 9 Wants to Know's first story, President Donald Trump signed this into law. It forces all helicopter manufacturers to finally place crash-resistant fuel systems inside every newly built helicopter.
The fact is, you and the station were pretty tenacious. We're taking a step to avoid this happening to anybody else.
Dave and Amanda call it a start. Safety standards in all helicopters must be improved. A foundation they've started will work to do just that.
I just know he's gonna do big things. He's not done. There's nothing done. And Dave never called it quits. He kept fighting.
A fight he fought.
Need to get him in his house. Guy's been waiting 3 years, so.
From one day
I'm excited. I'm feeling good.
to the next.
I'm really just looking forward.
This is Dave's helmet. I think that's our goal, is to keep working on this with Karen, to make some good come out of this.
Once he was able to start standing up and walking, he pushed himself as hard as an Olympic athlete.
I really don't dwell a lot on what happened. I just try to go forward.
Moving forward.
We should probably go.
Should he be alive?
Statistically and medically, no.
3.5 years after Dave got into that helicopter, the Repshers finally moved back to Summit County.
It was just a long weekend. Well, a few weeks.
It's been a long
Month.
Yeah, couple months. Few years. It comes right down to it.
Home.
I know for a fact I would not be here without Amanda.
It was you led the charge, though. I mean, it was you fighting every step of the way. There were times when there was nothing else we could do for you medically. I mean, you were either going to make it or you weren't, and it was all up to you, and you fought.
Near their home sits a memorial to what happened July 3rd, 2015. What happened here was no accident. The fire, the burns, the recovery, each a consequence of a system that failed far too often to protect crews and pilots.
There were gigantic red flags raised for years and years and years, and it's something that can be fixed.